Welcome to another edition of Advantage Connors here on a warm July summer day. Got something special today, Pops, here with my co-host Jimmy Connors. How are you today?
Always good. Nice to be with you, Brett.
Nice to be with you too. We have the NBA starts up at the end of the month, and we thought might have to bring somebody on who knows a little bit something about that. But a lot of you might know that she got her start in the tennis world. So we thought she'd be a great guest to bring on to talk a little NBA, a little hoops, and maybe a little tennis from back in the day. Welcome, Governor of the Los Angeles Lakers, Jeanie Buss.
What an honor to be here with you guys today. This is a treat for me, and I look forward to having good conversation. And it's just nice to see people without masks on.
Yeah,
but we're socially distanced for everybody, just so you know.
Just so you know out there.
We're far enough away, but I can see faces, and I like it.
Bean, we don't see you much anymore. You're so busy. You're so busy all the time.
It's my job. It's what I do, right? And I think, this is really what I was meant to do all along. And, my dad got me working when I was 19 and working at the Forum, bringing in tennis events, world team tennis exhibitions, and, kind of working my way up the ladder. But certainly this was something that, I've been trained to do. And now I'm the governor of the NBA Los Angeles Lakers, and I couldn't be more proud.
Your dad, Jerry Buss, real estate and owner of the Lakers, and as you said, brought you in and when you were young. But he was also inducted into the Southern California Tennis Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And it's interesting because you asked me to come and introduce him and induct him into the Hall of Fame, which was such an honor, and I thank you for that. But a lot of people don't really get just what you and your dad and the Forum did for tennis. And there was great tournaments in LA at the time. There was the Pacific Southwest, and then there was a tournament in Palm Springs, and there was a tournament in San Diego. But the way you promoted and marketed and brought in such great matches there was something very special.
Well, that's where my dad got his start, was in sports in the early 70s with World Team Tennis, in the original format of World Team Tennis, which had World Team Tennis at that time survived, the French Open and tournaments like that were, they were competing head to head for the top players to create a professional sports league in the U.S. And then, of course, the politics of tennis, they realized what World Team Tennis was a big threat, and, upped the prize money and did the right thing and started to pay the players the right way. So that's one good thing about competition. So the original World Team Tennis folded in 78. The LA Strings were playing at the Forum at the time. And my dad noticed that the owner, Jack Kent Cooke, of the Lakers and the hockey LA Kings, wasn't going to any games. And at that time, Cook was going through a divorce, and he had moved to Las Vegas in order to lessen the amount of money he would have to pay in a divorce, because Nevada was not whatever. Different laws for for divorce. So he started
community state,
thank you. And so he started kind of working on Jack Kent Cooke to sell him the Lakers and the Kings, because he really wanted to be in sports and own a team. And the Lakers were something that he had felt that, being born in Wyoming and moving to Los Angeles and making Los Angeles his home, he fell in love with the city. And he felt that there was a big East Coast bias with all the the Celtics and the Knicks and the 76ers, those were the teams that people cared about. They didn't really give credit to the West Coast teams. And he wanted to, create a team that the city could be proud of, the city that he fell in love with. And so really tennis brought my dad to, ending up owning the Kings and the Forum and the Lakers, which then he put me in charge of, let's get tennis back. Let's bring back World Team Tennis. So we did in a much shorter format, just 1 month during the summer in between Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, and then bring in great tennis exhibitions, because when you're a tennis promoter, the worst phone call that you get is about a month or two before your tournament, and people ask you who's in the final. And you have to explain it's a tournament, right, and you have to see who wins to see who's in the final. Exactly. But that, we realized there was a market for people who wanted to see the great matchups and didn't want to wait and see who was going to be in the final. So, that's really one of the reasons that I got to meet you, Jimmy, was, he gave my friend Linda Rambis, who I've been working side by side with for almost 40 years. He gave us a big challenge, which was to get Jimmy Connors and get him to play an exhibition at the Forum. And we started to stalk you and hound you, and
I noticed. I was no dummy.
And of course, we wanted you to play John McEnroe, which that's the match that everybody wanted to see, because it was like a title fight, a world heavyweight championship fight. Anytime you two guys were on the court, it didn't matter what was going on. You wanted to beat each other, and so it took a couple years, but finally, in March of 1984, we sold out the Forum and set the gross gate in ticket sales record that was held at the Forum. And it was the original record was for a Muhammad Ali fight in the 70s. So here you guys are 10 years later out drawing, the championship boxing, and, put on a match that I was, never so proud to be a part of something, and seeing tennis, sell out the Forum and be like Madison Square Garden and rowdy and full of celebrities. And it was really one of those great moments of my life. And certainly having you there was, made it that much more special.
Well, to come into play, exhibitions back then were really the thing, because the money was just starting to come into not just tennis but sports in general back then. So to go and play exhibitions was, if you could find somebody you could hook up with, was something special. Mm-hmm. And to go out and to play, and especially in LA, and you said it right, Jeanie, that it became almost like a destination, mm-hmm. For the celebrities and sports fans, and to have those one-nighters like that. And for you, and I keep going back to giving you the credit, and your dad, mm-hmm. for seeing that, because Europe saw it, Asia saw it, South America saw it, but I don't know if that was a vision of this country at the time, right or wrong.
I agree with you. I feel that the leadership in tennis, on the international and the national level, it really fails at, bringing in new people, new talent, inspiring more kids to pick up the game of tennis. And certainly, your record, it led young players like Agassi and Sampras and Michael Chang to pick up a game because they saw how great American tennis could be. Now, where did that go? Like, where are our great American players anymore? I don't understand. And so maybe it's because it wasn't promoted the right way in this country, or I don't know how to break down those barriers.
Yeah, it's interesting. That could be an all-day conversation, really, to find out the answer to that question. But the women seem to be doing okay.
Yeah, they're doing good.
Yeah, and it's funny because in our business, in the business that I'm in now, we draft players in the NBA at 19 years old, and at a time like, and we'll probably get to starting to draft 18-year-olds again. But when, for example, a player like Kobe Bryant was drafted, he was 17, which meant his parents literally had to sign his contract because he wasn't 18 yet. So very often I'm dealing with parents of players that are very young, because of my experience in tennis, I was able to have a lot of experience with parents who want to advocate strongly for their child. And I think every parent should be like that. So when you talk about women's tennis, I think back to a guy that kind of hounded me at the forum during all our tennis events, and he would tell me how great his daughter was at tennis. And I was like, yeah, I've heard this 100 times. Right. And, her name was Venus Williams.
Right.
And so we had her come and play as an undercard. And she was, I think, 14 or 15 and about to turn pro. And we couldn't find anybody to play her because she was just really coming into her own, and none of the top players wanted to lose to her because she was so young, right? And so I went back to her father, Richard Williams, and said, we can't find anyone in the top 20 that will agree to play her in an exhibition. And he said, well, actually, the person who gives her the best match is her sister, Serena. And I said, there's another Williams daughter? Are you kidding me? Serena. So at that time, I had never even heard of Serena. And to see the career that they've had and the influence that they've had on women's tennis and women's sports overall truly is, a success story and an inspiration. And again, I'd like to see more American players follow in their footsteps.
So
Well, it's cool now with Coco Gauff.
Yes.
She's just 16 now, and she's out there already beating the pros.
Right.
So imagine the mentality that you knew that back then that they didn't want to lose to a 15-year-old who wasn't a pro.
Right.
Now they're really hating it.
And then she's got the swagger.
For sure.
I love
you can
that.
see that she's going to be good for a long time.
Yeah.
So what do you think? And like I said, we could talk forever on that. Is it the same in basketball though? I mean, is it cyclical? Players coming around in tennis or basketball, where all of a sudden you get a group coming out of college in 4 or 5 years, and then it goes dry, and you don't find the stars? Is it the same?
It does seem like that. I wish I knew the answer, but it does seem like you get like a cohort of really good players at one time that kind of come in together. And when you think of Chris and Martina, like, why did they have to play each other in every final? And they wanted to beat each other so bad. But that's it. Would Chris be Chris if it hadn't been for Martina? And we all have to respect our opponent that brings out the best in us. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Like you with Mac. Mac made you better.
That's what sports is all about, though.
Yeah.
You got to find, and we'll get to this a little later, but that's the Lakers and the Celtics.
Right.
You got to have somebody that you can butt heads with.
Right.
Yeah, and to me, I mean, that's a rivalry to me. And it's not. It can't be soft. You got to go in every time and know that these guys want to beat you just as bad as you want to beat them, or worse.
Well,
right?
and did you watch the Last Dance documentary on Michael Jordan?
Some,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. So that's what's unusual is that Michael Jordan really didn't have that one defined, enemy that got in his head. He almost created those rivalries just to get himself pumped up. So even in that last year of the Bulls as we knew them with Phil and Michael, you had the general manager saying, no matter what, even if you win a championship, Phil Jackson's not coming back to coach the Bulls. And so it became, like, that's how the season started. So it really became the opponent was actually the front office. And it seemed that that's what inspired them to win
Right.
that championship more than anything was even inside their own organization, which I found fascinating. But
that's the mark to me of a true champion, to be able to find a reason, whether it's staring you right in the face or you got to create something, and so you mentioned Michael Jordan. I mean, how can you mention somebody any bigger than that?
Exactly.
But when you said that he didn't have that one opponent, to really step up, what. Did it come down to every night for him then? I guess it did.
It did. All he wanted to do was win. He
Yeah.
was so obsessed with winning. And like you have to look at it, the timeline went that his first championship was in 91, beating the Lakers with Magic Johnson. And then, 6 months, and we thought, oh, this will be a fun rematch. Like, we got to beat the Bulls and get our championship back. But that fall, Magic had to retire because of the HIV virus. So we never had that chance to, revenge the loss to the Bulls. So then really not until Kobe came was there somebody that really they mentioned as being the heir apparent to Michael Jordan. And certainly now when you look back at how much Kobe copied Michael's game, you really see it. And I think that the documentary kind of reminded people of how much Kobe just copied Michael's mannerisms and was completely inspired. And so what drove Kobe was to be better than Michael. So sometimes it isn't even playing against each other on the court. It's just saying, I want to be as great as so-and-so and making it your own personal challenge.
Yeah, it seems like that you're saying in basketball that given that in basketball what tennis is missing.
Right. And Phil Jackson loves tennis because it is that gamesmanship. It's one-on-one. It's mental. It's like a chess match. And so to him, that's the closest to what basketball was. So, when he sat out a year of coaching, he went to the Australian Open by himself because he just loved tennis so much. Like, just to watch that and to, really it comes down to who's got the stronger will to win.
I think it's interesting that you say that the greats will find a reason to take it to the next level no matter what. Because even though, the Bulls had won 5 rings at that point.
Right.
They'd come off 2 back-to-backs. So they're the heavy favorite. And still he digs deep and is able to, in the front office, I'll find it anywhere. Someone out there is against us.
Yep.
And I'll use that to fuel me.
Yeah, and I think Michael kind of, when he retired, he probably retired too soon and then, tried to come back with Washington, which was probably not a good idea. But I think he really kind of struggled to find what is that going to be that next thing that feeds me, that's going to fire me up. And now he owns a team, so that he's made peace with that.
Is that an attitude that bygone, that find that dislike or that hate or that motivation or wherever you find it, is that gone by or do you see that still?
I see it. I guess, when you watch NBA and you see, and it's hard for me because I'm not allowed to talk about players on other teams, but because that would be tampering. But I think there are a couple of rookies that are in our league this year that are like, they just have that, like you're on a bad team that's not going to make the playoffs, and yet you don't give up, you don't back down, you want to be part of the NBA greats, and even on a bad team you're going to stand out and you're going to do the work, and that's for yourself. That's the only motivation that you can find.
When you went to SC, you studied business.
Yes.
Right? And did you ever think back then, I mean, you were breaking in slowly. Mm-hmm. You were tennis and volleyball and then also around the NBA. Mm-hmm. But did you ever think that where this would take you, the experience that you had early and what that is doing for you now?
My dad, he in his mind, he wanted to make enough money so his kids could do whatever they wanted to. So he didn't really, he didn't make a decision, Jeanie, this is what you're going to be, a businesswoman, or you're going to take over the family business. I just gravitated to it because I enjoyed it, and I loved it, and he saw that in me, and he fed that in me. Like he nurtured that, I guess, business sense, and he saw something in me, and he told me for many years, because his goal was to keep the Lakers in the family even after he was gone. And when the way our tax laws are set up, it's very difficult to pass on an asset of the size of the Lakers, an NBA team, because of the amount of inheritance taxes, death taxes, as they call it. And he, over a 10-year period, was slowly creating a trust and putting the Laker stock into that trust for the benefit of the family, so that the family could keep the team. And he told me often that he was going to put me in charge. And knowing that I had 2 older brothers and a younger sister, that seemed, and also 2 even more younger brothers from stepbrothers, it was kind of like, well, he may be telling all of us the same thing. So, whatever happens. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm doing it because I like doing it, not because I'm trying to, move up on the totem pole. And, certainly after he passed away, and there was, I guess, like in the movies, the reading of the will. It was kind of a surprise to my siblings that I was put in the position that I'm in now. And, we can talk about sibling rivalry. That really has nothing to do with sports. But, it didn't sit well with my older brothers. And, it finally came to, after 3 years of watching my brother run the basketball department and making decisions that weren't cohesive in complementing each other. The way I always looked at a team is that every decision that you make complements the decision before. Otherwise, you're all over the place, and you're just changing your mind and going through coaches. And he had hired a coach in Mike Brown, who was a very good defensive-minded coach, and after 18 months fired him and brought in Mike D'Antoni, who's known as a very non-defensive coach, the total opposite. So you can't possibly, those two styles of play can't have the same roster. You have to build a roster for the style of play that you want. So it was kind of like I wasn't seeing, where we were going with the team. And, we had just signed a 25-year deal with Spectrum, who carries our games. And when we signed that deal, they literally said, we know how you've run the Lakers team the last 25 years. Are you going to run the team the same way the next 25 years? Because that's what we're counting on. And when year after year we were failing to even make the playoffs, that's not what we agreed to. Right. And that was hurting us and hurting the business. So I had to make the decision, of which as I was making that decision to make a change with my brother, unbeknownst to me, he had hired lawyers to try to oust me from the position I was in. So that was the controversy that people unfortunately had to hear about a few years ago. And that's when I brought Magic Johnson on to run our basketball program. And he's the one that got us in the right direction to get a LeBron James. And then I think Magic just decided it was, he'd done what he needed to do, and being part of the 9-to-5 world wasn't something that he wanted to do. And but I give him so much credit for the success that we're having now. And certainly he's somebody that, I grew up with and love very much.
But he also had a vested interest. He was a Laker. Come on.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
he had that in his heart. I mean, and I guess it's like anything else. You grow up, you're with a team, and all of a sudden you live that team even when you're not playing.
Right.
So was that part of his coming back because of his feeling? Didn't one time he had a vested interest in owning the Lakers? Is that right or wrong?
Yes. He at one point owned Laker stock. After he retired, he had more years on his contract, so he converted that contract into equity into the team. Right. But then he sold his piece to acquire a piece of the Dodgers, of which he owns now. So yes, but and when you talk about that vested interest, I imagine that's how you feel when people talk about where's the great American tennis players, because it's like your name's always going to come up, and it's kind of like people ask you, well, hey, why isn't there another Jimmy Connors right now dominating in tennis? And you feel it's like a reflection on you too. Just like Magic, when the Lakers were failing miserably, people would say to him, "What's wrong with your Lakers?" Even though it wasn't his responsibility.
What's wrong with your Lakers?
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like he will always be vested that way and want to see the Lakers do well.
I always thought it was cool though that he brought LeBron, just because everyone tries to compare LeBron to Jordan and Kobe, but his game style is more like Magic.
It is, right.
So I thought that was always a really cool thing that he was able to bring him into the Lakers.
Yes, and it's so important for a player like LeBron, who could have gone to he had a lot of options. He needs to know that, are you investing in the organization? Do you guys really want to win? I want, accountability and transparency and a great organization. And that's what Magic, they really bonded, because they're very similar, both, from the Midwest, both, a lot of success at a young age. And they
very
really
business-minded too.
Yeah, and very business-minded.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what do you think about that, what she was saying? Like, do you feel like that interest? Like when people say, where's the next great American man? Like, do you feel like, like you're bummed that there's not somebody out there? Like,
well, of course. I mean, tennis in the U.S. for 35 or 40 years was it. From my generation with, I can name a few of them, myself and Gottfried and Stockton and then McEnroe and then Sampras and Agassi and Courier and Chang and then ending up with Andy Roddick in 2001. I think he won the U.S. Open and was the last U.S. man to win a Grand Slam. But all of a sudden we start building these big stadiums in New York and and I want to get blistered for this, but I don't care. To showcase foreign talent, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But somewhere the guys got to start stepping up and saying, it's time now for my career not to be judged on my bank account, but on the amount of tournaments that I win and Grand Slams, because that seems to be the way it's gone now, Jeanie. That how many Grand Slams have you won? Where back in the day it was every day.
Right.
Did you win today? Now it's about Grand Slams. So, from my standpoint, I liked what you said. That it's not getting into the hands of the kids, where they have baseball, basketball, football, hockey, soccer, volleyball, everything that they can get into now. So what's going to bring them to tennis? And like you said, it's been lost somewhere along the way.
And it kills me because it's such a great sport. So like when we watch Nadal play Federer and they have this like great match, like that used to belong to the U.S. when you guys would have these unbelievable marathon matches. And, where is that kid out there that's watching that going, I want to do that? And
do they have too many choices?
I think so, but it was interesting. A year or two ago, I hosted some USC football players at a Laker game, and I got to talk. I had some time to talk to them before the game, and I was really surprised at how many did not play football in high school. They were track, they were volleyball, they were basketball, and almost as if they wanted more well-rounded athletes instead of just the kid that all he did was play football. They wanted good athlete, right? And so maybe tennis needs to be, introduced back into it's not like you just have to play tennis and play it every day, but like if you're going to play soccer, everybody should play tennis at least some point in their life just to be exposed to it.
Well, Martina was the first one to really bring in that cross training. Back in the day where she got, she started playing basketball with Nancy Lieberman.
That's right.
So, that changed her whole physical appearance also. I mean, she got stronger and her movement got better and everything.
And
so
mentally, it gives you a break, makes you think a different way. And so maybe that's what needs to happen. But now in schools, there is no physical education. There is no time. So it's almost like the dollar drives, if a parent wants a kid to go into something, maybe to get a scholarship, but really it's about money. And it's hard to play tennis. There's not a lot of courts, and you've got to find someone to play with. So it isn't something you can just go in your backyard and do.
And you have to win.
Yeah.
With team sports, you can be really good, put up numbers, and I think that's why in America the women have had so much more success. Like you said, it's about the money. So there's only a couple options for the women, like golf, tennis, WNBA a little bit, but they're not making big money like the golfers and the tennis players do. But then with the men, they have football, basketball, baseball, where they can make huge money. So everyone always wonders, what happens if LeBron played tennis? Or some of the guys in the NBA or NFL chose tennis, we'd probably be just fine, with American tennis players.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I always think that's why you see the women having more success consistently, than you do the men.
because they don't have as many options.
When you look at it
to
like
be a pro.
monetarily,
right?
Because you see the problems that the soccer just went through, you know, where they like challenge their contract to try and get paid more. It's like, dude, they're the best team in the world.
That's true.
And they're not getting paid as much as the men. So
That's true. And you know, and being a woman, it's hard for me to talk about that, the disparity in pay for women athletes versus male athletes. But as a promoter, I'll tell you, it's whatever the money that's brought in, go, you know, we share it with the athletes. So it's got to be a sport that brings in the money in order to pay the athletes. And so that's the disconnect. It isn't gender bias. It's ticket buyer bias. And that's what needs to change. And so, like, for me, just on a small level, since we brought up women's sports, I am involved in it's called WOW Women of Wrestling. And so I've invested in these opportunities because there's, you know, I'm a product of Title IX, which was passed in the 70s. And literally in 1977, my PE teacher handed me a golf club and said, "You're on the women's golf team." And I said, "I've never played golf in my life. How am I on the women's golf team?" And she said, "If we don't have a women's team, we can't have a men's team because of Title IX. So we'll teach you." And so I ended up, you know, playing golf in high school, and we won the city championship. Right. And I didn't even think of that as an opportunity. It was given to me. I was made to do it. But there's so many women athletes now that participate in college sports, field hockey, volleyball, basketball, all these things. And there's not, unless you're in the WNBA or a tennis player or a figure skater, there's not places for women athletes to earn money. And so I figured wrestling sells tickets. You know, there's no such thing as a women's only wrestling group. And what I liked about that is that women fight their own battles instead of running to a man to solve their problem. And so that's kind of a labor of love that I'm working on and that we're out pitching right now to networks. And I think we're going to get something really good. I'm very proud of it.
That's really cool.
So thank you.
That's really cool. And they have a really loyal following.
Yeah.
People who love wrestling. I mean, I grew up watching Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and all those guys. Made him take me to Madison Square Garden in the middle of the winter one time. We were
How
living
old
back
when
east.
you were just a little
10,
kid?
9 or 10. You know, took the train in. I remember that.
It was a day out with Pops, you know, and I never saw a crowd like that. You know, to be that into it, no matter. I mean, we had seats. I don't know. Way far up.
Way up.
But I mean, the excitement all around the Madison Square Garden was something. And you know, with wrestling, I guess it's either in your blood or not, right?
Right.
So, but when you came up, Jeanie, you saw so many greats pass through L.A. Playing for the Lakers. You know, from when you were growing up to when you were around it to
Showtime.
Yeah.
Showtime.
How do you compare?
It's like I'm so blessed and so lucky that it's crazy. I guess I look at people like me. I'm a producer or a operator or whatever you want to call it, promoter, and our job is to give talent the platform to succeed, to give the talent the tools and the exposure and the opportunity to shine and be the best that they can be. And that's my little role in, being around all these great athletes, is letting them be the story. Like I never understand it when you have an owner in a sport who is bigger than any of the stars on their team. And, there might be a football owner who gets more in endorsements for himself than his players on his team. Like he wants to be the star, not them. So I'm the complete opposite. I feel that, talent is so rare and God-given that it really deserves to shine. And, I was fortunate to have, you being part of that story and watching, and even, that great run that you had at the U.S. Open late in your career, and how you just lit people on fire and inspiration. It's like, that's what sports is all about to me.
I don't know if everybody knows, but you used team tennis that summer before the run in '91.
That's right.
To hone the skills and get ready for the U.S. Open.
Let's talk a little bit about team tennis back
Yes,
then.
yes, please do.
I've never had so much fun in my life. and I say that because first it was in L.A., which was great, and playing, for you and the team that you had put together was just so much fun, to go around and to travel. And we were from LA. We thought that every time we would go someplace that didn't matter where we go, that they'd be rooting for us. And yeah, LA's coming. I never heard more boos in my life. They just didn't like us. Why?
And you fed off that though. The
I
louder
love
they
that.
booed, you loved it.
I loved it. Yeah, I did.
But you had a team behind you, and that's one of the, Billie Jean King. It's her baby, and I love the fact it's 2 men and 2 women playing together. And we play all different sets. Men's singles, women's singles, men's doubles, women's doubles, and mixed doubles. And it's men and women contributing equally to the outcome of a match.
Right.
And that's I'd really, really love to see a co-ed basketball league. And I really think that I was talking to Kobe a lot about it because he was coaching his daughter, and Gigi really was going to change how people looked at women's basketball. Like she had that same
already.
That look in the eye, that killer instinct, just like her dad. And I really, she might have been the first, female in the NBA, but certainly I think there's room for a co-ed league. I'd love to see a basketball played that way, because I think the way the rules are now, and it's not just big guys hitting each other under the basket. The game has spread out, and that you can have great shooting, and I do think we'll see that someday, a co-ed league.
But has the fun been taken out of it? And the reason I say that is because I want to go back to team tennis again. You had a young upstart working for you called Sam Bain, our buddy. He's our buddy. And when you wouldn't travel and you were busy, Sam would come and take care of us and look after us. But he made it so much fun, and did you inject that in him, to say, listen, these guys got to have fun no matter what? Or because the more fun we had, the better we played, and it just made it.
She sent him on, I think we were the first team to have a private jet.
Yes.
So, that made it pretty fun, too.
Thanks,
made it pretty cool.
No, that makes
made travel easy.
It made it easier, and certainly you were the superstar for our team and our league, but that's what my dad taught me, and so if I taught that to Sam, then that's good. Sam's one of my favorite people. I still talk to him all the time, but he lives on the East Coast, boo.
Yeah.
But, I don't get to see him enough, but certainly that's why, those are the people that I surround myself with, are people like Sam of like mind, and knowing, taking care of the team can lead to success. So that's kind of how we operate. It doesn't guarantee success, but it certainly, I think, goes a long way in showing that you care and what's important.
Even I'm sure even in the down times you feel the same way about your team. But when the Lakers had such a legacy of winning, in your downtime, your fan base, they stick with you?
Thankfully, the Laker fans have been fantastic and been very patient. I think that when Kobe was coming to the end of his career, and the idea that he was a player that played 20 years for the same organization, and because of the tight relationship that we had, he came to me in November of that last season and said that that this was going to be his last year, but he wanted to announce his retirement the way he wanted to. And he knew that he could trust me, that he could tell me, and that we would set it up so that he could do it the way he wanted to, and it wouldn't leak out. And, a week later, what he wanted to do was he wanted everybody that was at that game, not expecting anything other than a Sunday game in November, everybody received a letter. And that there was one letter for every person in the audience, and there were no more made. So it was that much of a keepsake, and it was him announcing his retirement. And the gift that gives an organization like us is that it allowed us to celebrate the end of his season. Because a lot of players might say, I'll decide in the off season if I want to come back or not. I may be looking at other offers, and it would have left everything up in the air. But the idea that he announced his retirement allowed this amazing Kobe love tour that I don't think he even understood, that when his last game at the Boston Garden, that they would cheer for him. And even in Denver, every place that he went, they got to show him their love and appreciation for what he brought to the game. Now, mind you, the Lakers, I think we were 25 and some awful record that season, but it didn't matter because it was about Kobe and about Kobe's being able to let him know how much we loved him. And
but fans recognize that. It doesn't matter where you go. They recognize, number one, greatness. Mm-hmm. They recognize what you do for the sport while you're playing, like you're not. They're gonna give you that love, that feel, especially when you're going. They may not like you when you're sinking those 3-pointers and beating your team, but they're still, the fans are fans, and deep down are the best.
They're the best, and the Laker fans have been very patient. Bringing LeBron was one piece, and then making the trade for Anthony Davis was, the other piece of the puzzle. And now we have a 1-2 punch that was sitting at the top of the Western Conference when everything got shut down. So,
How do you think this year is going to play out now?
Let's see. Do you want to talk about that now, or
You could just touch on it a little if you want.
Yeah,
and then we could do more in depth.
I'm optimistic that we'll have an end to this season. Like whether it's going to be us or another team winning a championship, I'm glad that we'll have some kind of end to this chapter, this season, because it's once in a lifetime pandemic, that's
right.
for sure.
The hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope and that we get through this.
Do you feel like, is there a sense amongst the players and the team like to win for Kobe? I mean, everyone obviously wants to win for themselves, but maybe could you talk a little bit about Kobe? We were talking last night, and when we heard the news about what had happened, we were playing golf together up here, and in the morning it was foggy, and I feel like that's one of those things you're going to remember where you were when you heard it. You know, and we were walking off the third green, and he looked at his phone, and we thought it was it was some sick joke.
It's like a hoax.
Yeah,
right?
one of those hoax tweets or something like that. And then, it ended up being true. And, can you just talk about what he meant to you and your team?
It's hard to process, and it's like, like Magic retired in 91, and, I see him on a regular basis all the time. He's such a part of our landscape. And so now to think about Kobe, and I'm not going to see him when we have the reunion of the 2000 team or the 2001 team, or, just having that void, it's impossible to fill because of what he meant to the organization. And, for me, he was a personal inspiration and somebody I went to bounce ideas off of. And he was always very strategic in his thinking, which, like, to me, that's like the tennis, because it's always like seeing if I'm going to hit it here, how's he going to hit it back, and how am I going to return that shot? Like, Kobe was always like steps ahead of everything. And, he would give me strategy and support, and never judgment, never second guessing, never, when he decided to retire, it wasn't like, I don't care about the Lakers anymore. Like, he wanted us to still be great and still do well. And, I will miss him, for the legacy he created, but I will miss him as a friend and a confidant and somebody that I thought I would, know the rest of my life.
It's interesting. You see pictures when he's sitting with his daughter in the stands, and I know when my mom was teaching me tennis, how she would, get in my ear and get in my face and point and show me and see how that's how you do it. And I saw that in him with his daughter, and I'd always see his daughter, the way she looked up to him with, the eyes and just, soaking up everything. So you look at, like I said, people recognize greatness, but greatness goes beyond just that word. It's the way you can get your point across. It's the way you communicate with the fans or your daughter, and how to play the game. And his came, it looked to me like, and correct me if I'm right, tell me if I'm right or wrong,
okay,
that it came from his soul and his heart, the way he was. He wanted to give that in his experience to his daughter so bad that he was willing to do anything.
But he also saw the spark in her eye,
yeah.
and he said, I remember him telling us, I think it's my, he had his older daughter, but he said, I think my younger one, she's got it. She's got the bug. I see it in her eyes. She's like, Dad, how can I do this better? How can I do that?
Yeah.
And he fed it. He knew how to nurture that part of her. And I loved how proud he was of being a girl dad, and how many, dads, don't know how to coach their daughters,
right,
or to see that ease of relationship. It was inspiring for a lot of parents and a lot of fathers, but
dealing with your kids is a gift in itself. It is, and especially life in general, but in sports, how to keep them interested and how to. Like my mom, I can go back to my mom and Pancho Segura because they taught me things I didn't even know it,
right?
And how to get the point across, and I just almost took it in my stride because to them and saying that was no big deal,
Right.
And that's a gift in itself.
Yeah, And you know, my dad teaching me, he was always trying to teach me poker. And I'm the worst poker player of all time because I've got no poker face. Like I can't, like I'd be like, oh, like a 4 of a kind. Like, oh wait, I wasn't
good, right?
supposed to show you,
Not supposed
right?
to tell
Like,
me
right?
early.
I like, I'm the worst liar there is. So, but and his point was, and I kept telling him, Dad, I'm not gonna be the poker player that you think I can be. And he said, he goes, what I want you to know is that, he said, that poker is all about patience, and it's all about having the right cards. And he said, you have to wait for the cards, and most people can't because they're too impulsive. They want to hurry up and force it and push the game, right? He said, but once you do get the cards, you have to be able to go from 0 to 100. And he goes, that's what I'm afraid that you won't be able to do. That's the part that I am concerned about with you in this business. So when the decision was being talked about trading Lonzo Ball and Josh Hart and Brandon Ingram for Anthony Davis, it was really hard for me to do because these kids, you know, came to us as rookies and we were developing them, and I was watching them grow. So proud of them. But this was that moment that my dad was talking about. Are you going to be able to say, you have the cards now? Are you going to make the move? And so I, you know, like all those words came right back to me. Like, don't be scared. You know, you've got it. This is the deal, and go for it. And so it's just, you know, all those teaching moments that parents have.
Also be big enough to pay the consequences either way.
Right.
If it works, then, you know, take the pat on the back, and if
Right.
it doesn't, you
Right.
have to take it all.
You learned. I
learned.
learned something, right? And you know, and I'm not a parent, so like I like hearing the parenting stories, and you know, like Phil Jackson. You know, every year he would give books out to the players, you know, like on the long road trip, he would specifically pick out books for each player for them specifically. And, you know, a lot of them would like roll their eyes, you know, make a joke. And finally, after a few years, I said to him, why do you still do it? Like they make fun of it. And he goes, the message is always going to be there. They may take it home and it'll sit on a shelf, and maybe 10 years or when they become a parent, they're going to go, I wonder what he wanted. What was he trying to teach me? And they'll go back to that book. So it's like, it isn't like, okay, I'm your parent, I'm going to tell you this right now. It's about imparting wisdom over time,
Right.
over a lifetime.
Right.
And they're like little things almost that get activated.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, he was trying to teach you about poker. You're like, dude, I don't know poker that well. Like, what do you mean?
I'm never going to go to a card.
0 to 100 at your car? What are you talking about?
Right.
But then you get in a situation later and you're like, this is what he was talking about.
This is what he's talking.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're right. That's that stuff that gets in your DNA.
That's cool.
That's too deep.
I know.
No, but it's good because I think a lot of people, whether they're Laker fans or listening to this podcast or whatever, they think things just come naturally.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that you know, your whole life you've been groomed is a bad word.
Right. Right.
It's not the right word.
It's a negative word almost.
It's not. It's not the right word. But
Right.
but
Prepared, taught, you know, like immersed. But, you know, going back to, you know, the fact that I'm not a parent, there was one time, I love this story. There was one time, Jimmy, where when the team, the LA Strings, when you were playing for the team, and we had a match in Hershey, Pennsylvania. And if people don't know where Hershey, Pennsylvania is, it's where they make Hershey chocolate. So they actually have an amusement park that is Hershey Land or whatever it is, Chocolate Town. And so the team was practicing, and you said, would you mind taking my son, Brett, over to Hershey Park? He really wants to go.
Oh,
and
boy.
I was like,
He likes chocolate.
I'm so honored that I get to take Brett to the amusement park. So, you know, we go over there, and somehow I lose him.
Oh,
And
I have not heard this.
you've never heard this story?
No,
You've
keep
heard.
going.
Yeah, keep going.
Well, we found him.
Yeah.
Just so
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
I
so
got
you
it.
do, like, you know, not to spoil the end of the story, but I lost him. I lost him at and it was like, you know, the police came and they shut down the park, and it was like I was going cuckoo. I didn't know what was going on. And there was Brett watching everything
From above.
He had climbed up on the roof of the office building, the administrative building or something, and he watched all the stuff go on.
The chaos.
We never looked up to see if we could find him, but
That's
thankfully, you know, that was like where I was really like, I don't know if I'm like meant to be a parent or not.
Like, this
And it
guy's
was
a-
like,
this kid's
I
a
lost
punk.
a kid. I lost a kid.
That's funny. Well, the fun part of that day was getting to eat Hershey Reese's peanut butter cups,
There you go.
fresh off the line. So that was really fun.
And I do have a picture from that, which now we can laugh at it, but I was pretty stressed out.
Yeah, we're riding in, I think, a giant kiss, like the
Yes,
the roller
like that was-
coaster.
yeah.
But you sit in like a giant kiss, and it's like me grinning, and poor Jeanie's like, "Oh my god."
I picked a bad day not to take a little practice off. I should have come with you.
Yeah.
You guys are having so much fun.
Well, now you know why they were booing the LA team, because we were
true.
playing in Hershey, Pennsylvania, towns like
That's
that. The big city team.
You've had so many popular people, stars of stage, screen, politicians, everything everybody come through and want a seat at the Laker games.
Yeah.
Any favorites?
There's only one person I ever asked for his autograph, and it was when he first started on the tour. Tiger Woods used to come to a lot of games, and there was just something special that you could see in his eyes that, you know, it was like when I first met Kobe, like Tiger was like, I'm going to win this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Like he just listed all the things he was going to do because he knew that's what he was going to do. Like there's no
Right.
stopping him. It's just like that's how much confidence. But yet I think really a nice person, interesting person. And I just was so moved by him. And I still have that autograph
Do ya?
today. Yeah.
That's cool.
Do you save pictures and do you have a gallery of
I
not
should.
only-
I should.
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
mean-
I'm bad at organizing. I'm not a hoarder. I mean, it's like, it's accessing things because it's kind of like different chapters. And it's almost like on my desk, you know, my desk gets piled. It's almost like rings on a tree. You know how you can tell the age of a tree by like, and what happened. Oh, here was the winter of, you know, and you can see the ring on the tree. It's like when when Kobe died, it's like my whole world just stopped and things just started. I couldn't process. I couldn't accept it. I still can't accept it. And, I'm so grateful for all the pictures and things and the collectibles that I have from my time with Kobe. And, so I do have a lot of stuff. I just need to be able to access it better because I do have a cute picture of me and Brett that I wish I could have found today.
Lost.
It'll turn up somewhere.
Better turn up like Brett turned up. I guess, right?
That's right. Eventually.
Just look up. Well, how did Jack Nicholson become such a super fan?
It's funny because people think that it's like we invited him to come. He was a season seat holder starting in 71 or 72. and those were his seats. He pays for his seats, and he's like every other fan, like, because people are like, oh, Jack must not be doing well. He hasn't been coming to games. And I'm like, it's because we're not winning and there's no reason for him to come. So then, he was there opening night, so
Still supports.
he comes when he knows that there's going to be some winning going on. That's when he shows up.
And then another question, why does he sit, because at the Forum he sat on the Lakers side, right? And now he sits on the opposition side? Is that just so he can pester the other players?
We did that on purpose. It's kind of like you never know if, Jack from The Shining's going to be sitting there, right? It's a little intimidating.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's such an atmosphere. I want to go back to the Great Western Forum because walking into that arena and the restaurant and the bar that was up top and I played there a number of times, and thank you for the invitation many times. Thank you. And it was the after that was so much fun. You go in there and spend, have
Forum
dinner,
Club.
have a drink at the Forum Club, and just see everybody. And the energy and the excitement. So great.
And where you could cross-pollinate, and movie stars with boxers, and like people that normally wouldn't be brought together. The Lakers, it was like a who's who, like whatever was hot at that time, and LA is, kind of, it's such a diverse city and such a spread out city that, my dad used to say that when you live in LA and you have friends that come visit you, they ask you to go, they want to do three things. They want to go to Disneyland, they want to go to the beach, and they want to see a movie star. So where could you take them that you would be guaranteed that they would see a movie star? Well, a Laker game, right?
That's cool.
And so, that's kind of how he wanted Laker games to be. It was just kind of microcosm of all LA in one place.
Has that energy and feeling changed since you moved to the Staples Center?
It was... When people move to new arenas, I always tell them, make sure that you win a championship that first year. Because when we moved from the Forum to Staples Center, it was hard on our fans. We had been at the Forum for over 40 years. Right. And so when we moved to Staples Center, people were like, well, I want the same seat I have at the Forum. And I'm like, well, you can have the same seat you have at the Forum. The Lakers won't be there, but you can have the same seat. But, it was a different configuration because there were suites and, so it was hard, and people didn't like the hot dogs. They didn't like the parking. They didn't like the, but then once we won, then it was like, we didn't lose our mojo.
Right.
But, I look at, for example, Golden State opened that new arena and just had nothing but bad luck, and winning the championships and having such a great run like they did, they kind of went the opposite way. that they at their lowest level, they're opening a new building, and then that makes it, to me, more of a challenge because people aren't happy when you're losing.
Yeah. Winning cures a lot of things, doesn't it?
It does, for sure.
I can remember being there with you the night they won at Staples.
Which one?
The first one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, remember they had locked us in because they were like kind of like little riots right
Yeah,
out front there.
Yeah, they wouldn't let us go
They
home.
wouldn't let us out. Yeah,
That's right. Oh
So,
gosh,
that
how
was
old
awesome.
were you then? So that was 2000.
19, I think. Yeah. And luckily, you said it earlier, when Magic lost to the Bulls, we were there for that one, Pops and I. You were lucky enough to hook us up with the playoff ticket there, finals. So I always think it's neat. I got to see Jordan's first and Kobe and Shaq's first because of you. So
There you go.
thank you,
That's
Jeanie.
pretty good.
Yeah,
That's
it's not bad.
Right. Well, I got to ask you, have you ever thought, what would you be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing now?
I probably would be like a real estate developer or something in real estate. How about you?
I was born and bred to play tennis.
There you go.
Yeah, so so I guess but I look back and I wouldn't change a thing, and I know you wouldn't either,
Right.
Because it was given to us by our parents, and that's very special anyway. But I always want to say that I'd love to be a lawyer, or but I can't sit down long enough to read a book, so I'd rather be up and going, and so it fit me to a T. It seems like this is the same for you.
I've had my moments where I've doubted if I could keep going on. When Magic, decided to step down and do it on live television, that was a little bit, took me off guard. And that summer was, that was an up and down summer. We got Anthony Davis, but we missed out on Kawhi Leonard. And, I like to think that we have the Lakers back to the way Dr. Buss wanted the Lakers to be, and that's really that's important to me.
Your dad would be proud.
Definitely.
I think so.
Definitely.
You don't have to blush when you say that. It's a fact. Come on, Jean.
I hope so, and
Yeah.
it's just he really. When we talked about World Team Tennis and how we treated the players, he always made sure that players, even on other teams, when other teams went bankrupt, my dad would step in and make sure those players got paid, because he knew reputation in this business was everything, and you had to live up to your word. And it was really important to him that the Lakers make Los Angeles proud, and I think that we're getting to that place again.
Yep. I think that you guys are right on track. First in the Western Conference, ready to rock. Can you just do one thing? We have a listener who sent us a question.
Okay.
And just wanted me to ask you. So you're one of the few women, only women, in ownership and the upper brass of sports and everything. Can you give us some advice that you would give to other women out there who are dealing with battling against something that's kind of stacked against them? Let's say.
You mean to work in a male dominated
Yeah, exactly.
Field, the advice I like to give is that. Sports is so competitive, and everybody is always looking to come out on top. And some come straight at you, and some will come around you and try to stab you in the back. And I think that, in my case, in times where I've felt being a woman was a drawback was when people tried to make it that way. And I mean that in... there was one conference, one meeting I was in a conference room full of people, but I was the only female, and it was a heated negotiation. And the guy that was talking was using foul language, and he turns to me and he says, "Excuse me," apologizing for his foul language, but really patting me on the head, reminding everybody, she doesn't belong here. We have to stop the process and, pat the little girl on the head. And I said, what, excuse me, if you're going to apologize for your language, then apologize to everybody in the room. Mm-hmm. Because, it was I had to call him out. And I don't think he was necessarily a woman hater, but he was trying to get leverage over me, and he was going to use it with intimidating language or to, embarrass me or whatever he was trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I guess in sports, you're going to deal with that every day. Everybody wants what you have. People are looking for an edge. And if they think they can intimidate you because you're a woman, then they will, because you think that you can be intimidated. But it's really just the nature of the business, and don't back down.
Stand your ground.
Stand your ground.
That's changing.
I like
now.
it.
That's
Oh,
changing
yes.
now, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
How? Tell me how.
I don't know if it's because more women, it's just like we're just around more, so everybody's used to it, like get used to it kind of thing. I just think that the younger generation is more empathetic and more compassionate and more respectful of differences in people, whether it's gender or race or sexual orientation. I mean, I just think that younger people have more tolerance for people that are different, aren't just exactly the same as them.
Yeah, but aren't you looking for somebody to do the right job?
Yeah, yes, always.
Always. I mean,
Yes.
so
Yes.
I guess that's what kind of confuses me in a lot of ways. I mean, I was brought up in a female dominated, my mother and my grandmother, and now by my wife Patty, So, but I mean, but I get that. I understand that. The person to do the right job and to get the job done and to know how to go about it and to make it whatever it is successful is who you're looking for. It doesn't matter who. Mm-hmm. So would that be more in sports or in business?
I think it's
just
on
everything?
business. I think it's any place where money can be made. It's like people bring out whatever weapon they have to get ahead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. You think we're living in a tough enough time with this pandemic and everything that the slowdown that's been happening, and I'm looking forward to. I always liked Jeanie when 2020 came in. I said, "Oh boy, let's get out of last year and get into this year because so much is going to happen." I've listened and talked to people. They're saying, "Can we just X out 2020?"
I know, right?
And get going and get back to some resemblance of normalcy here. A lot of people doing a lot of hard work and doing a lot of good out there right now with the people on the front lines, our doctors and nurses and everybody that's trying to fight through this. And I just and I know it's the same feeling that I get from a lot of people that our hearts go out to them because they're the ones fighting so hard for this and to allow us us meaning everybody else to get back and to live their lives.
I'm with you. Like, I thought 2020 was like the year of like perfect vision, right? 2020, that's what they talk about when like it's going to be a great year. It's going to be, and like, it's just been nothing but the worst year.
Yeah. And it just keeps going, too.
It just keeps going. Can it be over soon?
Yeah. You seen that one meme where it's like August or something, aliens coming, and it shows like every
That's
every
what's
month.
next, right? Yeah, that's got to be.
It's got to be what's coming.
And it's funny, you asked me, like, what else would I be doing? I literally, last night, I cried some tears because I had this realization that I'll never be a nurse. Like, I look at nurses and doctors now as my heroes for what they've done.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I'll never be a nurse. Like, it's too late for me to go to school and become a nurse. I was like, but I'm so proud of they show up every day, and it's been hard on them. And there's so much misinformation that's added to the uncertainty of everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But talking about giving your all, we talk about it, lightly in sports, really. I gave it my all. The doctors and the nurses, and they are every day and putting their lives on the line, and all the credit and heartfelt love that goes out to them and what they've done.
Yeah, totally.
Well said. Well said.
How has it affected you guys? Like the whole business and everything.
Well, it's funny because I remember, David Stern years ago talking about because if there was ever a pandemic, like that was always the, a black swan event, a pandemic, something where, like, because we've had other disasters in sports, like when Hurricane Katrina destroyed the arena in New Orleans, that team had to play in Oklahoma City because they had no arena. It only affects one city, the disaster. This was a disaster over all 30 teams, and trying to figure out how are we going to, how long is this shutdown going to last? How are we going to get back to some kind of normal? It's been a challenge like none of us have ever gone through. We sent our employees home in March when when they said to shut down the city. We haven't had employees in our building since. They've all worked from home, and trying to keep them engaged and them like productive. And we have Zoom calls, and in some ways I don't recognize people because they haven't cut their hair, they're growing their beard, and I'm like, wait, who is that again? Like it's been like a challenge, and that are people gonna want to go back to being in crowds? And we had that discussion in our business a few years ago when there was like shootings, like at the Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, England, and we thought that's it. People aren't going to let their kids go to concerts anymore. People are going to be scared to be in a large crowd. But we found it was the opposite. It actually brought people wanting to be together more. So I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this pandemic, because is it going to be another 6 months? Is it going to be another 2 years? Like, when do we get to be together? And is it going to change how we want to gather and how we want to watch sports?
Yeah, it's weird. It seems like there's not a lot of pressure, but a lot of eyeballs on the NBA, just because, tennis has tried some stuff and golf is playing, but those are pretty much individual sports. You can get away with a lot more there.
Right.
So I think everyone else is going to be so focused on the NBA and what goes on under the bubble.
Yeah.
To see what they do.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, because baseball is going to try to play, but now Canada won't let the Blue Jays, no team can go to Toronto, so they have to play in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
So, so they, it'll be interesting. And then football, every day, it seems like they keep pushing the start of their season. They just canceled all their preseason games. Right. So now it's September will be the first game. Well, is it, are there going to be fans at those games? So nobody knows the answers to this, but I think the bubble was kind of an interesting concept, and so far, knock on wood, that it's working.
Yeah.
Athletes playing in front of crowds is really what kind of drives you to, tries to bring out the best in you. Will it?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's an interesting question, that I feel. It's the same in tennis. Would I like to play the U.S. Open with no fans? Would I try hard? Yes. With the feedback, and the excitement, the electricity, the energy, and I kind of got a feeling that all the other sports they almost need that.
Yeah.
And the players are going to miss it. Not that they're going to try any less, but that feeling of getting feedback from perfection is something that I would miss the most.
Yeah, and just like you fed off the booze when we were, the away team in other, team tennis cities. It's like a player like Kobe loved the booze that he got, like that energy, even though it was negative, it was still energy to him, right. And he knew how to use it and process it.
I'm glad you explained that. That was BOOS as opposed to BOOZE.
Right.
Booze.
Yeah, the booze.
Yeah, I was
not
wondering
that
what you were
booze.
saying there.
Yeah, just-
That was after the match. That was after the
that was
match.
after, exactly. Oh, boy.
What was the name of that bar we'd go to sometimes after the Strings games? It was like near the airport. It was like one of the hotels. Champions.
Champions, yeah.
That's right.
We had to have a place to hang after.
Everybody knows our name there. That was for sure.
Well,
That's funny.
Jeanie, I can't thank you enough for coming up and joining us here on Advantage Connors, and it's always good to catch up and to see you, but to listen to you in your life and what you've been through and what you're doing now. It's just been old friends. Glad to see you.
Thank you. And I love that you guys are doing a show together. I wish I could have done that with my dad.
Yeah.
But it's neat to see the relationship that you guys have, and I'm glad that I didn't permanently lose you in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
So I could be here on the show now. Yeah, it's a lot of fun doing it with them. We kind of just started it, just for fun, and it's been a learning experience and something fun to be creative, especially during the pandemic and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you so much for coming on. When we made the list, when we were thinking about guests, when we thought about doing the show, you were at the top.
Oh, thank you. Really?
Yeah,
Thank you.
for sure.
Always.
That makes me feel good.
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you.
Thank you.